12-year-old Malik Green never expected that an ordinary day would turn into the defining moment of his life. When his mother was trapped in a car wreck, Malik broke through the window, pulling her to safety despite the thick smoke and smell of gasoline escaping the damaged vehicle. In those brief, harrowing moments, Malik became a hometown hero. But what came next would surprise everyone, as Malik's courageous act grew into something much larger than himself, a movement of resilience, compassion, and hope that would inspire an entire community and far beyond. If Malik's story inspired you, there's so much more to discover. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for powerful stories of courage, resilience, and kindness. Don't miss out on our latest content. Hit the bell icon to get notified of every new story we share. It was a gloomy evening. The sky hung low with thick grey clouds as if foreshadowing something no one could see coming. Aisha Green, a hard-working single mother, glanced at the dashboard clock in her car, her heart sinking. She was running late again. The hands on the clock glowed in the dim light, edging closer to 5:30 p.m. Malik, her 12-year-old son, had his big basketball game tonight, and he'd been looking forward to it for weeks. "Hang tight, Malik. Mama's coming," she whispered, gripping the steering wheel tightly as she made a swift turn onto the narrow, empty road that led to their neighborhood. Aisha worked long hours at the diner in town, waiting tables and managing the bustle of the lunch and dinner rush. She rarely had time for herself, let alone time to catch Malik's games, but tonight she was determined to make it. Her car rumbled along, and she felt a shudder that had been there for weeks. The repairs would have to wait, she kept telling herself, because their tight budget had no room for unexpected expenses. Her fingers instinctively tightened around the wheel as she pressed her foot on the gas, a small worry starting to prickle at the back of her mind. Malik needed her, and that was all that mattered. Then it happened. The steering wheel jerked violently in her hands, and she heard a loud, ominous clank as the car lurched to the left, swerving out of control. Aisha's heart pounded as she fought to steer the car back on the road, but the brakes barely responded. She screamed as the car spun, skidding across the pavement before slamming into the thick trunk of a tree on the side of the road. The impact sent a shock through her body, leaving her momentarily dazed. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the faint hissing sound coming from the hood. Pain shot through Aisha's chest as she struggled to catch her breath, her hands trembling as she tried to move. She realized with mounting terror that her leg was pinned beneath the crumpled dashboard. The sharp smell of gasoline filled the air, and smoke began to drift from under the hood. She tried to scream, but her voice came out as a weak, desperate gasp. Just a few streets away, Malik sat at the basketball court, anxiously checking his watch. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. His mother was never this late, not on a night this important to him. His friends, sensing his worry, tried to reassure him, but Malik barely heard them. Finally, his phone buzzed in his hand, and he looked down to see an unknown number flashing on the screen. "Hello?" His voice was small and hopeful, praying it was his mother, calling to tell him she was on her way. "Is this Malik?" The voice on the other end was tense. "This is Officer Richards. I need you to come quickly. There's been an accident." The world seemed to tilt as Malik processed the words. Without thinking, he dropped his basketball and took off running. His legs pumped furiously as he tore down the sidewalk, his heart pounding with fear. The streetlights blurred past him as he sprinted toward the intersection where the officer had told him to go, his mind racing with a single thought: "Mama needs me." When he finally reached the crash site, Malik's eyes widened in horror. His mother's car was smashed against a tree, the front crumpled like an accordion, and smoke was starting to curl from the engine. A few people stood at a safe distance, murmuring to each other, but no one dared get close enough to help. Ignoring the onlookers, Malik ran to the driver's side, where he saw his mother slumped over, her face pale and her breathing shallow. He pounded on the window, calling out to her, "Mama! Mama, wake up! It's me, Malik!" At the sound of his voice, Aisha stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Relief flooded through her face as she saw her son, but it quickly turned to panic when she realized how trapped she was. "Malik," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Get back, it's not safe." But Malik wasn't about to leave her. He looked around, desperate for something, anything that would help him pull her out. His mind was racing, heart hammering in his chest as he spotted a small rock on the ground. With all the strength he could muster, he smashed it against the window, once, twice, until the glass finally cracked. He used his sleeve to clear away the jagged edges, his hands trembling but determined. Sliding his small frame through the broken window, Malik reached for his mother's hand, his voice steady despite his own fear. "I'm here, Mama. We're going to get you out." Aisha's leg was pinned under the dashboard, and she winced in pain as Malik tugged at her arm, trying to free her. The smoke was getting thicker, and the acrid smell of gasoline was overwhelming. He heard people shouting, warning him to get back, but he ignored them, his focus entirely on his mother. He felt her grip tighten in his hand, a silent message that she was fighting to hold on. Malik took a deep breath, his face set with determination. He pushed against the twisted metal with all his might, straining to give her enough room to move. Inch by inch, Aisha managed to shift her leg, grimacing through the pain. When she was finally free, Malik wrapped his arms around her, using every ounce of strength to pull her through the window and onto the ground. The two collapsed in a heap on the grass, both gasping for air. Malik's heart was pounding, his arms aching, but he felt a surge of relief as he looked down at his mother, her face pale but alive. Tears filled his eyes as he held her close, whispering, "You're okay, Mama? I've got you." The crowd, who had watched the entire scene unfold, stood in stunned silence. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. A young boy risking his own life, braving smoke and gasoline fumes to save his mother. As the first responders arrived, they quickly took over, rushing Aisha to the ambulance. Malik held her hand until the last possible moment, not willing to let go. As the ambulance doors closed, Malik felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Officer Richards, who had a look of awe and respect in his eyes. "Kid," the officer said, his voice filled with admiration, "you just did something most grown men wouldn't have the courage to do. You saved her." Malik nodded, his gaze fixed on the ambulance disappearing down the road. In that moment, he didn't feel like a child anymore. He felt strong, determined, and ready for whatever came next. Malik sat on the curb, the reality of what just happened settling into his bones. The adrenaline that had carried him through those terrifying minutes was finally beginning to fade, leaving him trembling in its wake. It was only now, sitting in the cool evening air, that he felt the weight of his actions, the weight of fear he hadn't let himself feel when his mother was trapped. An EMT approached, kneeling in front of him with a gentle smile. "Hey kid, you're okay?" She handed him a bottle of water, her face soft with concern. Malik nodded, taking a sip. His throat was parched, his mind still replaying the scene, the crumpled car, his mother's face, her quiet gasps of pain. For a moment, he struggled to form words, feeling small and overwhelmed in the midst of the flashing lights and the steady hum of the emergency scene around him. When? When can I see her? He finally asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. He was used to seeing his mother strong and composed, the way she always was in their small kitchen in the mornings, cooking oatmeal for him before school or singing along to the radio on her rare days off. Seeing her so vulnerable, so still, filled him with a fear he couldn't shake. She's on her way to the hospital, the EMT reassured him, placing a hand on his shoulder. They're going to take very good care of her, and once she's stable, you'll be able to see her. Malik nodded again, his eyes fixed on the ambulance lights as they grew smaller and smaller in the distance. His hand clenched tightly around the empty water bottle, his mind already forming a silent promise to his mother. He would be there, no matter what. The officer from earlier, Richards, knelt down beside him. I know this is a lot for you to take in, but you did something brave tonight, Malik. You saved her. There was admiration in his voice, the kind of admiration usually reserved for soldiers or firefighters, not 12-year-old boys. Malik swallowed, his voice almost a whisper. She's all I have. Officer Richards nodded, a flash of understanding in his eyes. She's lucky to have a son like you. Let's get you to the hospital. Malik didn't need to be told twice. As the officer led him to his squad car, he could feel the eyes of the crowd on him. Neighbors he recognized, strangers who had stopped out of curiosity. Some of them nodded in respect, others gave him small smiles of encouragement, but all he could think of was his mother. Malik slid into the car, his heart pounding again as he realized he'd be heading to the hospital alone. The ride was quiet, with Officer Richards casting glances at him in the rearview mirror every few minutes. Malik barely noticed the city lights flashing by, barely heard the soft hum of the car engine. All he could focus on was getting to the hospital, getting back to his mother. When they arrived, the stark fluorescent lights of the emergency room lobby hit him, and he felt his courage waver for the first time. Officer Richards walked him to the front desk, where a nurse took his name and directed him to a waiting room down the hall. The waiting room was cold and quiet, and Malik sat alone, feeling smaller than ever. Minutes stretched into hours, and his thoughts spiraled, worry tightening in his chest like a vice. He replayed the accident in his mind, wondering if there was something more he could have done, if he'd acted fast enough, if she'd be okay. At last, a doctor entered the room, his white coat spotless, his face serious but kind. He walked over to Malik, sitting down across from him. Malik, your mother is going to be okay. She has a fractured leg and a few bruises, but she's stable. She'll need some time to recover, but she'll be all right. Malik's eyes filled with tears of relief, and he let out a shaky breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Can I see her? The doctor nodded, a small smile breaking through his otherwise stoic expression. Just for a few minutes. She's been asking for you. Malik followed the doctor through the long, sterile hallways, his heart pounding with every step. The smell of antiseptics filled his nose as he reached her room, and he paused at the door, taking a deep breath before stepping inside. There she was, lying in a hospital bed, her face pale but smiling as her eyes met his. A faint bruise marred her forehead, and her leg was wrapped in a heavy cast, but she looked at him with all the warmth and strength he'd always known. "Mama," Malik whispered, rushing to her side. He took her hand and she squeezed it, her grip weak but steady. "Oh, Malik," she said softly, tears glistening in her eyes. "You saved me." Malik swallowed back his own tears, his voice catching. "I couldn't just stand there, Mama. I had to do something." She brushed a hand over his cheek, pride and love filling her gaze. "You're my hero," she murmured, her voice a blend of gratitude and awe. In that quiet hospital room, with the hum of machines and the soft beeping of monitors around them, Malik felt a surge of something he hadn't felt before: strength, responsibility, and a deep, unshakable bond with the woman who had always been his protector. As he sat beside her, holding her hand, he knew that their lives had changed in a way that neither of them could fully understand yet. But whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. Malik stayed by his mother's bedside, unwilling to let go of her hand. Exhaustion began to pull at him, but he fought to keep his eyes open, watching her with a fierce protectiveness. For so long it had been just the two of them, his mother taking on every burden and challenge, her strength seeming limitless. Now, seeing her like this, it was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing just how much she had been carrying on her own. A nurse entered the room, glancing at him with a warm smile. "You must be Malik," she said softly, careful not to disturb Aisha, who was now sleeping peacefully. "Your mum's going to need some rest, and so will you. Why don't you come with me for a little while?" Malik hesitated, glancing back at Aisha before nodding reluctantly. The nurse guided him to a small waiting area down the hall, where a blanket and a few pillows had been laid out for him on a long, uncomfortable couch. As he lay down, pulling the thin blanket around himself, memories of the accident flooded his mind. He closed his eyes, but each time he did, he could still see the smoke, hear the crack of metal, and feel the cold, desperate grip of his mother's hand as he pulled her from the wreckage. When he finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, his dreams were filled with fragments of that night, each moment replaying in vivid detail. The next morning, Malik woke to the sound of voices in the hallway. He sat up, rubbing his eyes, and saw a small crowd gathering near the nurse's station. His heart skipped, a sense of dread tightening in his chest, until he overheard someone mention the brave boy who saved his mum. The story of his rescue had spread fast, and it seemed people in the hospital were eager to catch a glimpse of him. As he approached his mother's room, he noticed a few familiar faces, neighbors and people from their community, lingering outside the door, talking quietly. Malik paused, surprised by their presence. He wasn't used to this kind of attention, and a strange mixture of pride and discomfort filled him. Just as he was about to enter, a middle-aged woman stepped forward, a sympathetic smile on her face. "You must be Malik," she said, reaching out to pat his shoulder. "You're quite the hero around here, young man. What you did for your mother, well, it's something most people wouldn't have the courage to do." Malik's cheeks warmed and he managed a small nod. He didn't feel like a hero. He had done what he had to do, what anyone would have done for someone they loved. But seeing the admiration in the woman's eyes stirred something within him, a deep sense of responsibility. Inside the room, Aisha was sitting up in bed, her leg propped on a pillow. She looked stronger, though still pale, and she smiled when she saw him enter. Malik's heart lifted as he rushed to her side, his worries momentarily forgotten. "Good morning, Mama," he whispered, squeezing her hand gently. "Good morning, my hero," she replied with a soft chuckle, her voice filled with warmth. "You didn't leave, did you?" Malik shook his head. "I promised I'd be here, didn't I?" Aisha's smile faded slightly, a shadow of worry crossing her face. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been there, Malik. But I'm more worried about you now. You've been through so much, more than any child should have to handle." Malik looked down, his fingers tracing small patterns on the bedspread. He didn't know how to explain it, but he felt different. Last night had changed something inside him, something he couldn't quite put into words. The door opened and Officer Richards stepped in, his face lighting up when he saw Malik and Aisha together. He held a small bag of takeout, which he set down on the bedside table. "Good to see you both looking a little better this morning," he said, nodding toward Aisha. "I just wanted to check in and see how you're feeling. There's been a lot of talk about what happened last night, and I'm sure it's all a bit overwhelming." Aisha nodded, her eyes flickering with gratitude. "Thank you, Officer Richards. I don't know how to thank you for everything." Officer Richards held up a hand, shaking his head. "No need for that. I'm just glad Malik was there. If I may say so, you raised one heck of a young man." He glanced at Malik, his expression filled with genuine respect. Malik shifted under the weight of their attention, but a flicker of pride sparked within him. Maybe there was a part of him that was proud of what he had done, not for the recognition, but because he had been able to protect his mother, just as she had always protected him. Later that day, Malik and Aisha received a visit from Malik's principal and a few teachers from his school who had come to express their admiration and support. They brought flowers, a few books, and a small banner that read, "Our hero, Malik Green." Malik felt a strange thrill as he saw his teachers looking at him with something close to awe. He had never been someone to seek the spotlight. He was quiet and preferred to go unnoticed, but seeing the pride in their eyes filled him with a newfound sense of purpose. Aisha watched the scene with quiet pride, her heart swelling as she saw how the community had come together around her son. The gratitude in her eyes was unmistakable, and Malik could feel it too, a sense that this was more than just a momentary acknowledgement. It was a reminder that they were not alone, that there was a network of people who cared about them. As the visitors left, Malik sat down by Aisha's bedside, his mind still racing. "Mama," he began, hesitating as he tried to find the right words, Do you think people really see me as a hero?" Aisha reached out, touching his face with gentle fingers. "You're my hero, Malik. And I think you've shown everyone else just how strong you are too. But remember, being a hero isn't just about one moment. It's about kindness, about being there for others, about standing up when it's hard. You've always had that in you, my love." Malik's gaze softened as he listened to her words. He had never thought of heroism in that way, but hearing his mother's voice, he felt an understanding bloom within him. It wasn't just about a single act of bravery. It was about the choices he made every day, the quiet strength that had always been part of who he was. The next morning, a news crew arrived at the hospital, hoping to interview Malik and Aisha. They were hesitant at first, unsure if they wanted to share their story with the world. But after some consideration, Aisha agreed, feeling that Malik's story might inspire others. As the camera began rolling, Malik sat beside his mother, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. The reporter introduced them, explaining how Malik had risked his own life to save his mother, and then turned to him with a warm, encouraging smile. "Malik, can you tell us what you were thinking when you saw your mum's car after the accident?" Malik took a deep breath, glancing at his mother before he answered. "I was scared," he admitted, his voice steady. "But I knew she needed me, and I couldn't just stand there and do nothing. I don't know. It's hard to explain. I just knew I had to help her." Aisha reached over, taking his hand, and he gave her a small, reassuring smile. The reporter's eyes softened, clearly moved by the strength of their bond. "Malik, you're truly an inspiration to so many people. Your story has already touched countless hearts," the reporter continued. Is there anything you'd like to say to other kids who might look up to you? Malik hesitated, his gaze shifting to his mother's encouraging smile. Then he turned to the camera, his voice filled with quiet conviction. I just want people to know that even if you're scared, you can still be brave. You can still help someone. And maybe you don't have to be a hero like in the movies. You just have to be there for the people you love. The room fell silent as his words sank in, and the news crew exchanged glances, visibly moved by his sincerity. As they wrapped up the interview, Malik felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. He had spoken from his heart, and for the first time he understood that his story, his actions, had meaning beyond just that one night. As the news crew left, Officer Richards appeared again, a proud smile on his face. "You're something special, Malik," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "And I think you're going to do even more amazing things." Malik walked out of the hospital room with a sense of pride he had never felt before. As he and his mother returned home, they quickly discovered that their lives had shifted in ways they hadn't expected. For the first few days, there was a steady stream of visitors. Neighbors, friends, and strangers alike brought meals, gifts, and cards filled with words of admiration and encouragement. Malik felt overwhelmed at first. He wasn't used to so much attention, and each visitor seemed to have a new way of calling him a hero. Aisha, though still recovering, beamed with pride. But as the days wore on, Malik started noticing that this sudden fame was making it difficult for them to get back to their normal life. Everywhere they went, people recognized him. At school, his teachers and classmates treated him with newfound respect. Some of his peers, who had never spoken to him before, were now asking him to sit with them at lunch. Others wanted to hear every detail of his rescue, and some even asked for his advice. Malik, naturally shy and quiet, found himself wondering how to navigate this new role. He enjoyed some parts of it. There was a thrill in being recognized, in having his classmates look up to him, but he also missed the simplicity of just being Malik without the title of hero attached. A few days after they returned home, Malik's principal called him to the school office. When he entered, he saw a small group of students and teachers gathered around, applauding as he walked in. His cheeks burned as they greeted him, their faces filled with admiration and pride. "Malik, you've brought great honor to our school," the principal said, patting him on the back. "You've shown courage beyond your years, and you've become an example for all of us." She handed him a certificate of bravery, a crisp white paper framed with the school's logo, and a small medal, its gold surface gleaming. Malik accepted them with a quiet, "Thank you," his heart pounding as he scanned the room. He hadn't expected such a ceremony, and as the principal talked about his heroism, he felt both pride and a strange discomfort settling in. This attention was flattering, but it also set him apart from his classmates in a way he hadn't anticipated. When he walked back to his classroom carrying the certificate, he noticed that some of his friends were giving him curious, almost distant looks, as though he had somehow changed. In the weeks that followed, Malik found himself adjusting to the responsibilities of his new status. He felt an unexpected pressure to keep living up to the image everyone had of him. At school, kids asked for his opinion on everything, from math problems to personal issues, and some of them even began coming to him for advice when they had problems at home. He listened, did his best to offer support, but it all felt strange. The Malik he had been before, quiet, thoughtful, often unnoticed, had somehow faded into the background, replaced by this new version of himself that everyone else seemed to admire. One afternoon, he sat down with his mother, who was resting on the couch, her leg propped up with pillows. They were finally alone, and he seized the chance to share his thoughts. "Mama," he began hesitantly, "everyone keeps calling me a hero. I mean, I just did what I had to do that night. I didn't think about being brave or anything. I just knew I had to help you." Aisha reached over, taking his hand in hers. "You did what came naturally to you, Malik. You acted out of love. That's the truest kind of bravery." She looked at him with a soft, understanding smile. "But just because you didn't plan it doesn't make it any less real. People see your kindness and your courage, and they're drawn to that. And yes, it's a lot to handle, but remember, you get to decide who you are, not them." Malik nodded, letting her words sink in. He thought about what it meant to be a hero, to be the person others looked up to. It wasn't always about doing something grand. Sometimes it was just about being there for others, even when it felt challenging. As the school year continued, Malik made a conscious effort to use his newfound influence in positive ways. During lunch, he'd invite students who usually sat alone to join his group. He noticed how kids who had once been ignored were starting to get more attention because he took the time to include them. With a few simple acts, he began fostering a sense of community that hadn't existed before, drawing kids together, showing them that they didn't need a title to show kindness or courage. Yet Malik's sense of responsibility only grew stronger. He began feeling the weight of expectations both from his peers and the adults around him. His teachers assigned him leadership roles, asking him to help mentor younger students. He enjoyed being able to help others, but as the weeks passed, he realized he missed the simplicity of his old life. One day, while Malik was helping another student with his math homework, a quiet knock came at the classroom door. It was Officer Richards, the officer who had been at the accident scene that night. Richards motioned for Malik to come out into the hallway. "Hey, Malik," he said with a smile, a warmth in his voice that immediately put Malik at ease. "I know you've been handling a lot of attention lately. It's not easy being the focus, is it?" Malik nodded, his shoulders sagging slightly in relief. "Sometimes it feels like everyone expects me to be this perfect version of myself, like I can't make mistakes anymore." Richards patted him on the back. "I get it. People see what you did and want to believe that bravery comes without challenges or doubts, but it's okay to feel overwhelmed. Even heroes need help sometimes." He paused, looking Malik in the eye. "You don't have to be perfect. Just keep being yourself." Hearing that from Officer Richards lifted a weight off Malik's chest. He hadn't realized just how much he'd been trying to live up to an ideal, but with those words, he began to understand that it was okay to be vulnerable, to ask for help when he needed it. One evening, Malik was at the library working on a school project when he overheard two classmates talking about a new program that the school was starting. They were setting up a support group for students who were struggling with family issues or facing challenges at home. Malik's ears perked up as he listened, curiosity blooming. He approached the librarian, who smiled and nodded. "Yes, it's a peer support group. Students who have experienced tough times can share their stories and help each other. I think you'd be a wonderful addition to it, Malik. You've shown so much courage. Other kids could really learn from you." The next day, Malik attended the first meeting, joining a small circle of students gathered in a quiet room near the counselor's office. Some of the kids were younger, a few were older, and he could see the nervousness in their eyes. The counselor welcomed everyone, explaining that this was a safe space where they could share their experiences and support each other. When it was his turn to speak, Malik took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the group's attention on him. He thought about the expectations, the pressure, but then he looked around and saw not strangers, but kids who needed someone to understand them. "I never thought of myself as brave," he began, his voice low and steady. "When my mum was in that accident, I didn't know what else to do but help her. But after that night, everyone started treating me differently. They called me a hero, but sometimes it felt hard, like I couldn't be anything else anymore." One of the younger kids, a girl with wide eyes and a shy smile, raised her hand. "It's okay to feel scared, right? Even if people call you brave?" Malik smiled, nodding. "It is. Being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. It just means you keep going, even when it's hard." As the session continued, Malik found himself listening, really listening, as other students opened up about their own struggles. Some of them faced challenges he couldn't have imagined, but as he shared in their stories, he felt a sense of solidarity, a bond forming among them. They were all carrying something heavy, all learning how to handle life's unexpected challenges. By the time the session ended, Malik felt lighter, as though he'd finally found a place where he could just be himself without the weight of labels or expectations. For the first time, he saw heroism in a new light, not as something he had to live up to, but as a quality that resided quietly in everyone, something that could emerge in moments of kindness, resilience, and shared understanding. As he walked home that evening, Malik looked up at the stars, a newfound calm settling over him. He didn't have to be perfect. He didn't have to be the Malik everyone imagined. All he needed was to be there for those he cared about, just as they had been there for him. Malik returned home that night feeling a new sense of calm. Participating in the peer support group had given him a fresh perspective on bravery. It wasn't always about grand gestures or dramatic rescues. It could be as simple as listening to someone, standing by them, or even allowing yourself to be vulnerable. Over the next few weeks, Malik continued to go to the support group, becoming one of its core members. He watched the group grow as more students, some he barely knew, began to attend. Each person brought a different story, a new layer of experience and challenge. Malik found himself connecting with these classmates in ways he hadn't anticipated, learning about their struggles and sharing his own. In school, Malik's life took on a new rhythm. The intense attention had faded somewhat, and while people still looked up to him, he no longer felt pressured to live up to a particular image. He'd found his place, not as a hero, but as someone others could trust and rely on. The support group met every Thursday, and it became a sanctuary for him, a space where he could drop the expectations and just be himself. One Thursday, as the group gathered in the small, cozy room by the counselor's office, Malik noticed a new face among them, a boy around his age named Jaden. Jaden was quiet, his shoulders hunched as if he wanted to disappear, and he avoided eye contact with the others. Malik sensed that he was nervous, perhaps even unsure about being there. After the introductions, Jaden kept his gaze fixed on the floor, his hands twisting in his lap. When it was his turn to share, he hesitated, swallowing hard before speaking. I don't know if I belong here," he mumbled, barely audible. The counselor smiled encouragingly, nodding gently. "You don't have to share anything you're not comfortable with, Jaden. Just being here is enough." Jaden's gaze flickered over to Malik, and Malik gave him a small nod of encouragement. After a moment's hesitation, Jaden continued, his voice soft and shaky. "My dad left a few years ago," he began, his words halting. "Since then, it's just been me and my mum. I guess I feel like I'm supposed to be the man of the house now, but sometimes I don't know how to be. It feels like everything depends on me and I'm not sure I can handle it." Malik felt a surge of empathy for Jaden. He knew that weight, that feeling of needing to be strong for someone else. As Jaden spoke, He could see the same struggle in his eyes, the push and pull between wanting to help and feeling overwhelmed. "Jaden, I get that," Malik said when he finished. "I felt the same way after my mom's accident. Everyone kept calling me brave, but all I could think was how scared I was. I didn't know what would happen next or if I'd be able to protect her. Sometimes it's hard to know what to do, you know?" Jaden looked up, a hint of relief crossing his face. For the first time, he made eye contact with Malik, and in that moment, Malik could see the gratitude in his eyes. They shared a quiet understanding, a bond born from their shared experiences. In the following weeks, Jaden continued to attend the support group, slowly opening up and sharing more about his life. Malik noticed how Jaden's confidence grew and how he began to find comfort in knowing he wasn't alone. The two boys grew close, often staying behind after meetings to talk more about their lives. They'd discuss school, home, and their hopes for the future, their friendship deepening as they shared their fears and dreams. One evening, as they sat on a bench outside the school after a particularly heavy group session, Jaden turned to Malik with a thoughtful expression. "You know, Malik," he began, his voice steady, "you're the first person I've talked to who really gets it. I don't feel so weird or alone when I'm around you." Malik smiled, touched by his words. "Same here, Jaden. I didn't know it at first, but just talking to someone who understands makes things a lot easier." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Malik felt a deep sense of gratitude, realizing that his journey had brought him not only closer to others, but to himself. He was no longer the same person he had been before the accident. The experience had changed him, and in many ways, it had made him stronger. One weekend, Malik's mother, Aisha, decided to visit the support group. She had heard so much about it from Malik that she wanted to see it for herself. When she walked into the meeting room, Malik felt a rush of warmth. He hadn't expected her to join, but her presence filled him with a comforting sense of home. The group welcomed her with open arms, and as she shared her own story, Malik saw her strength and resilience reflected in every word. She spoke about the accident, the fear she'd felt when she was trapped, and her immense gratitude for Malik's courage. "Malik has always been strong," Aisha said, her voice wavering with emotion. "Even before that night, he's been my anchor, my light. I know people call him a hero, but to me, he's my son. I couldn't be prouder of the young man he's become." Malik felt his eyes sting as he listened, his heart swelling with pride and love. His mother's words were more than just praise. They were a reminder of the bond they shared, a bond that had been tested and strengthened through everything they'd been through. As the meeting ended, Aisha pulled Malik aside, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I see how happy you are here," she said, hugging him tightly. "I'm glad you found a place where you can be yourself, where you don't have to be anyone's hero. You've been through so much, Malik, and I want you to know that whatever you choose to do, I'll always be here for you." Malik hugged her back, his own tears spilling over. In that embrace, he felt a sense of healing, of closure. For the first time, he allowed himself to fully feel the weight of what had happened, not just to her, but to him as well. Inspired by his experience, Malik began to think about how he could give back to the community that had supported him. He spent hours researching and brainstorming ideas, his mind buzzing with possibilities. The support group had shown him the power of connection, and he wanted to create something that could bring people together in a meaningful way. One afternoon, as he and Jaden were hanging out at the park, Malik shared his idea. "What if we started something at school?" he said, excitement lighting up his face. Like a club where kids could come together to talk about what they're going through. A place where they could feel safe, like we do in the support group. Jaden's eyes widened with enthusiasm. That's a great idea, Malik. We could organize events, maybe even do community projects to help others. The two boys spent hours discussing their plans, sketching out ideas, and imagining what their club could become. They approached the school counselor, who was thrilled by their initiative, and agreed to help them get the club started. By the end of the school year, Malik and Jaden had successfully launched the club, calling it the Heart of the Matter. The club met every week, and it quickly became a safe haven for students who needed a place to share their struggles, hopes, and dreams. Malik took on a leadership role, guiding discussions and offering support, while Jaden handled the logistics, organizing events and planning activities. Word of the club spread throughout the school, and soon students from all grades began attending. Malik watched in awe as the club grew, its impact reaching far beyond what he had imagined. Students who had once felt isolated now had a place to belong, to connect with others, to find comfort in knowing they weren't alone. For Malik, the Heart of the Matter became more than just a club, it became a legacy. He saw how each member brought their own story, their own unique challenges, and he felt honored to be a part of something so meaningful. As he looked around the room one afternoon, watching the group laugh and talk together, Malik felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He no longer felt the pressure to be a hero in the way others expected. Instead, he had discovered that true bravery came in the small, everyday acts of kindness, in the quiet moments of support, and in the courage to be vulnerable. Looking back, Malik realized that everything he'd been through, the accident, the attention, the struggles, had led him to this moment. And as he watched his friends, his mother, and his community come together, he knew that he had found his purpose. The months passed, and the Heart of the Matter grew into more than just a school club. The sense of belonging it brought to students who had once felt lost or unseen became a powerful force in their lives. Teachers, noticing the positive impact it had, began supporting the club with supplies and allowing them to hold larger events. Malik, who once struggled to find his place, was now leading a community within the school, helping students share their struggles, offering support, and fostering connections in a way he never thought he'd be able to. One crisp autumn afternoon, as Malik and Jaden prepared for the club's latest event, a small community day, they sat side by side in the art room surrounded by colourful posters, banners and flyers they'd created to announce the event. It was the first time they were opening the club to the broader community, inviting family members, teachers, and even local businesses to join. Malik felt a mix of excitement and nerves. "Do you think people will actually come?" he asked Jaden, glancing at the stack of flyers still left to hand out. Jaden grinned, looking confident as he nodded. "Definitely. We've got so many people in the club now, and everyone's bringing their friends and family. Plus, the principal and a few local businesses said they'd stop by too." "You've really built something amazing, Malik." Malik looked down, a little embarrassed but proud. He remembered when all this had been nothing but an idea, a simple hope to create a safe space for students like him and Jaden. Now it was real, and it was bigger than he'd ever imagined. The day of the Community Day event arrived, and the school gym was bustling with people. Rows of tables were set up around the room, each with activities for the attendees. One table featured a gratitude wall where people could write what they were thankful for on colourful notes and stick them up for everyone to read. Another table had a small stage for storytelling, where students and family members were invited to share experiences and lessons they'd learned. Malik's mother, Aisha, arrived early, and stood by Malik's side as the event got underway, beaming with pride. She watched as he moved from table to table, greeting people, helping set up activities, and making sure everything ran smoothly. "Look at him," she murmured to Jaden's mum, who stood next to her. A year ago, he would have been too shy to even come to something like this, let alone organize it. But now, he's like a different person. Jaden's mum nodded, her eyes shining. "He's found his calling, Aisha. These kids all needed someone like him, someone who understands and brings them together. I think he's inspired all of us." As the day went on, Malik was swept up in a flurry of conversations and activities. He hardly had a moment to rest, but he loved every minute of it. Everywhere he turned, he saw people smiling, talking, and connecting in ways he'd hoped for, but never fully expected. At one point, the principal stepped up to the small stage in the center of the room, tapping the microphone to quiet everyone down. "Hello, everyone. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today," she began, her voice warm and proud. "This event is a testament to the power of community, of kindness, and of courage. But I think we all know there's one person who made this possible. A young man who turned a difficult experience into something extraordinary." She looked over at Malik, smiling. "Malik, would you mind joining me up here?" The crowd parted as Malik walked to the stage, feeling a mixture of surprise and gratitude. He hadn't expected to be singled out, but as he looked around the room filled with friends, family, and community members, he realized this was no longer just his journey. It belonged to everyone who had shown up, everyone who had supported the club, and everyone who had helped it grow. Standing beside the principal, Malik took a deep breath. "I don't know what to say except, thank you," he began, his voice a little shaky. "When we started the Heart of the Matter, I just wanted to create a place where people could feel safe, where they didn't have to go through things alone. And looking around today, I know we've done that together." The crowd erupted in applause, and Malik felt a warmth spread through him. His mother's face shone with pride, and Jaden gave him a thumbs up from the crowd, his own smile wide with excitement. When the applause finally died down, a few attendees took turns at the microphone, sharing what the club had meant to them. One student, a quiet girl named Layla, spoke softly about how the club had helped her overcome a difficult period after losing her father. Another student talked about how the club taught him the importance of empathy and reaching out to others. Each story reminded Malik of the impact the Heart of the Matter had created, not just for him, but for so many others. After the event, as Malik helped clean up, Jaden walked over, nudging him with a grin. "So, did you ever think something like this would come out of everything you went through?" Malik shook his head, laughing. "Not in a million years. I guess I just wanted to feel like I was doing something good, something that mattered. I never thought it would lead to this." "Well, you did it," Jaden replied, his voice full of admiration. "And you didn't just help other people, you helped me too." Malik looked at Jaden, surprised. "Really?" "Yeah," Jaden said, his tone sincere. "Before I met you, I thought I had to do everything alone. I didn't think anyone would understand what I was going through, but you showed me that I don't have to do it all by myself. I think I'll always be grateful for that." They shared a quiet smile, a bond between them stronger than any words could capture. Malik realized that, through everything, he had found not only a friend, but a brother in Jaden, someone who truly understood him. As winter approached, Malik and his mother continued their lives with a renewed sense of purpose and closeness. Though her recovery had been slow, Aisha grew stronger each day, her resilience shining brighter than ever. Together they began volunteering at local shelters and food banks, giving back to the community that had given them so much during their time of need. One evening, as Malik and his mother were preparing a meal at a community kitchen, a familiar figure approached them. Officer Richards, the policeman who had been there the night of the accident. "Malik," Richards greeted him warmly, extending a hand. "I heard about all the work you're doing with the club and in the community. I just wanted to stop by and say, you've really done something incredible." Malik smiled, shaking his hand. "Thank you, Officer Richards. I didn't really plan for all this. It just kind of happened. But it feels good, you know." Richards nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Sometimes the best things in life happen that way. You went through a difficult experience, but you turned it into something positive, something that helps others. That's not easy, Malik. That's real courage." As Richards left, Malik turned to his mother, who watched him with a knowing smile. She reached over, squeezing his shoulder. "You see, Malik," she said, her voice soft. "You were always meant to be someone special. I think your journey is just beginning." The following spring, Malik's story began to attract attention from beyond their town. A local newspaper published an article about the heart of the matter, and soon after, a regional news station contacted Malik for an interview. Aisha, always his biggest supporter, encouraged him to share his story. She knew that Malik's experiences and the club he had built had the power to inspire others. The day of the interview arrived, and Malik found himself sitting in front of a camera, his heart pounding with anticipation. The reporter, a kind woman named Miss Howard, smiled at him encouragingly. "So, Malik," she began, "tell us a little about how all of this started." Malik took a deep breath, thinking back to that night, the accident, and everything that had come after. "It all started with my mom. She's the strongest person I know, and after her accident I realized I needed to be there for her the way she'd always been there for me. But along the way, I found that there were a lot of other people who needed support too. I wanted to make sure they had a place to feel safe, to talk about what they were going through, and that's how the heart of the matter began." Ms. Howard nodded, clearly moved by his words. "And what would you say to other young people who might be struggling, who might feel like they don't have anyone to turn to?" Malik paused, thinking carefully. "I'd tell them, you're not alone. Even when it feels like no one understands, there are people out there who care, who want to help. You just have to reach out. Sometimes it takes a lot of courage to do that, but once you do, you'll find that there are people who want to listen, who want to help you through." The interview ended, and as Malik left the studio, he felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. He knew that this was just one step on a larger journey, one that would continue to unfold. He didn't know where it would take him, but he felt ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing he had his mother, his friends, and his community by his side. As he walked out into the warm spring air, Malik felt a renewed sense of purpose. He no longer saw himself as just a kid who'd been through something hard. He was a part of something much bigger, a movement of kindness, resilience, and strength that he would carry with him for the rest of his life. The weeks after Malik's interview were filled with unexpected developments. The story of the heart of the matter continued to spread, resonating with people far beyond Malik's school and neighborhood. Malik received letters and messages from students in other cities, even other states, who wanted advice on starting similar clubs in their own schools. Some shared their own stories of overcoming hardships and how they wished they had a place like Malik's club to find support. Malik responded to each message thoughtfully, deeply moved that his story had inspired so many others. One afternoon, Malik and his mother sat together in the living room, sorting through the stack of letters that had arrived in the mail. Aisha watched her son with a proud smile, her eyes shining as she read through a letter from a young girl who had been struggling with her parents' divorce. "Malik, do you realize how many lives you're touching?" she asked softly, her voice filled with admiration. "It's like a ripple. What you started here is spreading across the country." Malik looked up, feeling a mix of pride and humility. "It's strange, isn't it? I mean, I never thought something like this would happen. I just wanted to help my friends here." Aisha put a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes, when we act from the heart, the impact goes beyond anything we could plan. You've built something special, Malik, and it's only growing." Just as she finished speaking, Malik's phone buzzed with a new notification. He glanced at it and saw an email from someone named Ms. Caldwell. She introduced herself as a director of a nationwide organization that supported youth mental health and leadership. Intrigued, Malik opened the email, his eyes widening as he read. Ms. Caldwell explained that she'd seen Malik's interview and had been inspired by his story. She invited him to speak at an upcoming youth leadership conference in New York City. Malik's heart skipped a beat as he read her message. She wanted him to share the story of the heart of the matter and speak about the importance of community and resilience. It was an incredible opportunity, but the idea of standing in front of an audience of strangers was daunting. "Mama, look at this," he said, handing her the phone. She read the email, a smile spreading across her face. "Oh, Malik, this is amazing! They want you to speak in New York." She squeezed his hand, her excitement contagious. "You have to say yes. Imagine how many more people you could reach. How many more young people might be inspired by what you've done." Malik bit his lip, a mix of excitement and nerves building inside him. "I don't know, Mama. I've never done anything like that before. What if I mess up?" Aisha's gaze softened, and she took his hand, looking at him with a warmth that made him feel safe. "You'll do great, Malik. Just be yourself. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to speak from your heart. That's all anyone needs to hear." Malik thought about her words, feeling a growing sense of determination. This was a chance to make a difference, to take what he'd started and bring it to a larger audience. Taking a deep breath, he sent a reply to Ms. Caldwell, accepting the invitation. As soon as he hit send, he felt a surge of both fear and excitement, knowing that this was the start of something new. A few weeks later, Malik and his mother boarded a plane bound for New York City. It was his first time flying, and he could barely contain his excitement as the plane lifted off the ground, soaring into the clouds. Aisha held his hand, laughing softly as he stared out the window with wide eyes. When they arrived in the city, Malik was overwhelmed by the sights and sounds around him, the towering skyscrapers, the bustling streets, the bright lights of Times Square. He had seen New York in movies, but experiencing it in person was something else entirely. He and Aisha spent a day exploring, visiting Central Park and eating at a small diner near their hotel, their laughter echoing through the busy streets as they took in the wonder of the city together. The morning of the conference arrived, and Malik woke up with butterflies in his stomach. He dressed carefully, pulling on a crisp button-down shirt and his best pair of shoes. Aisha helped him straighten his collar, giving him an encouraging smile as they made their way to the conference center. When they arrived, Ms. Caldwell greeted them with a warm smile, introducing Malik to some of the other young speakers who would be presenting. Each one had their own story, their own passion, and Malik felt a surge of pride to be among them. As he spoke with them, his nerves began to settle, replaced by a sense of belonging. Finally, it was Malik's turn to speak. He walked onto the stage, feeling the weight of 100 pairs of eyes on him. The room was filled with young people from all walks of life, each listening intently as he adjusted the microphone. Malik took a deep breath, remembering his mother's words. Just be yourself. As he looked out at the audience, he began to speak. My name is Malik Green, and I'm here to tell you about a journey that started with a simple goal: to help others feel less alone. He paused, letting the words sink in. A year ago, my mum was in a car accident. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. But through that experience, I found strength I didn't know I had. And that strength didn't just come from me, it came from the people who supported us, from the community that helped us through. He went on to describe the heart of the matter, how it started as a small club at school and grew into something larger than he could have ever imagined. He shared the stories of the friends he'd made, of the students who'd found a place to belong, and of the ways the club had changed all of their lives. When we created this club, I didn't know what would happen. I just knew that people needed a place to talk, a place to feel safe. And sometimes that's all it takes. A simple act of kindness, a place to connect. That's where true courage and community begin. As he spoke, Malik saw nods of understanding in the audience, felt their attention and respect. He realized that he wasn't just telling his story, he was sharing something universal, something that connected them all. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Malik looked out over the audience, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment and gratitude. Ms. Caldwell joined him on stage, beaming as she shook his hand. "You did wonderfully, Malik," she whispered. "Thank you for sharing your heart with us." Backstage, Malik found his mother waiting for him, her eyes filled with tears. She wrapped him in a tight hug, and he could feel her pride radiating through her. "You were amazing, Malik," she murmured. "I'm so proud of you." As they left the conference center that evening, Malik felt as though a new chapter of his life had opened. He no longer saw himself as just a boy who had been through something difficult. He was part of something larger, part of a movement that could bring hope and healing to people he might never meet. Returning home, Malik found himself busier than ever. More schools reached out, asking if he would speak to their students or help set up similar clubs. The media attention grew, and Malik quickly learned to balance his time, focusing on school, his friends, and his club, while finding ways to expand the heart of the matter's reach. His story had become a source of inspiration, and he embraced it with the same humility and authenticity that had guided him from the beginning. One evening, Malik sat at his desk, flipping through a notebook filled with ideas for future projects. As he jotted down thoughts, his mother walked in carrying a tray with hot chocolate and cookies. "You've got that look again," she said, setting the tray down and smiling as she sat beside him. "What's on your mind?" Malik grinned, picking up a cookie. "I was just thinking. There's so much more we could do. Maybe we could start hosting monthly events, bring in speakers, get more parents and teachers involved. I want the heart of the matter to be something that lasts, something that keeps growing even after I graduate." Aisha reached over, taking his hand. "And it will, Malik. What you've built isn't just a club, it's a community, a legacy, and it will continue to grow because you're putting your heart into it." As they sat together, Malik felt a deep sense of peace and purpose. He knew that life would bring more challenges, more obstacles, but he also knew he had the strength, resilience, and support to face them. He had discovered a part of himself that he hadn't known was there, a part capable of inspiring others, of building a community, and of making a difference. Looking up at his mother, he smiled. "Thank you, Mama," he said softly. "For everything, for being there, for believing in me." Aisha's eyes filled with warmth as she hugged him tightly. "Always, Malik. Always." In the months that followed, the heart of the matter expanded in ways Malik hadn't even dreamed of. Teachers began incorporating the club's values into their classrooms, encouraging open discussions about resilience, empathy, and mental health. The club's monthly events became a cherished part of school life, with students and faculty members volunteering together on projects that ranged from community service to workshops focused on self-care and support. Malik was often asked to speak at these events, where he would share updates and inspire new members with the club's mission. As graduation approached, Malik felt a bittersweet mix of excitement and sadness. He was proud of everything the club had achieved, but he worried about what would happen to it once he moved on. It had become a second home for so many students, a place where they could open up and lean on each other, and Malik wanted that legacy to continue. One day, Malik met with Jaden and their advisor, Ms. Reynolds, to discuss the club's future. Ms. Reynolds, who had been one of their strongest supporters from the beginning, looked at Malik with a warm, encouraging smile. "You know, Malik, the heart of the matter is bigger than any one person. It's a movement now, something that has the strength to continue even after you've graduated," she said. Jaden nodded, glancing at Malik. "We've been thinking about putting together a leadership team. That way, the club can keep going strong with a few students in charge each year, so there's always someone to take the lead." Malik smiled, feeling a surge of relief. He knew Jaden was right. By creating a team, they could ensure that the club would thrive, no matter who was at the helm. And so they spent the next few weeks preparing a group of younger students to take over, training them in organizing events, leading discussions, and building connections within the community. On his last day as the official leader of the Heart of the Matter, Malik sat down with the new team, a diverse, passionate group of students who had each found their own place within the club. He looked around, seeing the same nervous excitement in their eyes that he'd felt when he first started. "I just want you all to know how proud I am of you," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "This club is special, not because of me or Jaden or anyone else, but because of all of you, because of what you're willing to give, the ways you support each other, and the courage you show every day just by being here." The students nodded, their faces filled with gratitude and determination. Malik felt a surge of pride, knowing that the club was in good hands. As they talked, he could see that each of them understood the heart of the club, the mission to create a safe, accepting space for everyone. When he walked out of the school that afternoon, Malik felt a sense of peace, knowing that his work would continue, even if he was no longer there every day. Graduation day arrived quickly. The auditorium was filled with proud families, friends, and teachers, all gathered to celebrate the achievements of the graduating class. Malik wore his cap and gown, sitting with his classmates as the principal delivered her opening speech. His mother, Aisha, sat near the front, her eyes shining with pride. When it was his turn to receive his diploma, Malik stepped onto the stage, his heart pounding. The applause was thunderous, and he spotted several of his friends from the Heart of the Matter cheering loudly. As he shook hands with the principal, she leaned in and whispered, "You've left a lasting impact, Malik. Thank you for everything you've done for this school." He nodded, humbled by her words. As he walked off the stage, his mind drifted to all the memories he'd made, the people he'd helped, and the strength he'd found within himself over the past year. He felt ready for whatever came next. After the ceremony, Malik joined his mother outside, where they took photos and shared hugs with family and friends. Jaden, his ever-loyal friend, was the first to find him in the crowd. "We did it," Jaden said, grinning, "and you're officially a high school graduate." Malik laughed, feeling a lightness in his chest. "I can't believe it. It feels like just yesterday we were starting this journey together." Jaden nodded, his expression softening. "Yeah, and look at everything we've accomplished. Thanks for being my friend through all of it, Malik. I don't think I would have made it without you." Malik smiled, reaching out to pull Jaden into a hug. "Same here, man. You're like family to me." As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Aisha wrapped her arm around Malik's shoulders, pulling him close. They watched the crowd around them, taking in the joy and celebration. "I'm so proud of you, Malik," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've become someone truly remarkable. I can't wait to see where life takes you next." That summer, Malik took on a job at a local youth center where he helped run summer programs for younger kids. It was an opportunity to use everything he'd learned, sharing his experiences with the kids and mentoring them the way he had his peers at school. He found joy in watching them grow, learning to trust themselves and each other, just as he had. One day, he noticed a girl standing alone in the corner of the recreation room, watching the other kids play but not joining in. She looked nervous, her arms crossed tightly across her chest. Malik approached her with a gentle smile. "Hi, I'm Malik. What's your name?" The girl glanced at him, hesitant. "I'm Leah." "Nice to meet you, Leah. I noticed you were standing here by yourself. Do you want to join the others? They're playing a pretty fun game." She looked down, shrugging. "I don't know. I just feel like I don't fit in." Malik's heart ached with familiarity. He remembered what it was like to feel alone, to wonder if there was a place for him in the world. Kneeling down so he was at her level, he spoke softly. "You know, Leah, I used to feel that way too, but I learned that sometimes all it takes is one person reaching out. And when you let people in, you'll be surprised at how many are willing to accept you, just as you are." Leah looked up, a small glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Really?" "Really," Malik said, smiling. "Why don't we go together? I'll introduce you to the others. You don't have to do it alone." As they walked over to the group, Malik felt a renewed sense of purpose. Helping others find connection and belonging was something he knew he wanted to continue doing, no matter where life took him. It wasn't just about the heart of the matter, it was about the person he had become and the impact he could make by showing others that they mattered. Toward the end of the summer, Malik received another email from Ms. Caldwell, the director he'd met at the Youth Leadership Conference. She invited him to consider joining a national program that trained young leaders to advocate for mental health and community support initiatives in schools and communities across the country. The offer felt like a natural next step. He talked it over with his mother, who encouraged him to follow his heart. "This is a big opportunity, Malik," she said, her eyes filled with pride. "You've built something beautiful here, and now you can take it even further. Whatever you choose, I know you'll make a difference." Malik thought about everything he had achieved, about the lives he'd touched and the friendships he'd formed. He knew that wherever he went, he would carry those lessons and memories with him. Finally, he sent Ms. Caldwell a response, accepting the invitation. He would be joining a team of young leaders from across the country, all working toward a common goal, creating a future where students could find the support, kindness, and community they needed to thrive. On his last night before leaving for the program, Malik sat on the porch with his mother, watching the stars. The night air was warm, filled with the quiet hum of crickets. Aisha wrapped her arm around him, her expression thoughtful. Malik, you know that wherever you go, I'll be right here cheering you on, she said. But I want you to know that you've already done something truly meaningful. What you've created, what you've built, it's a legacy that will carry on. Malik leaned into her embrace, feeling her love and support surround him. He knew she was right. The journey that had begun with a single act of courage had grown into something far greater than himself. It had become a movement, a testament to the power of resilience, community, and the simple but profound act of reaching out to others. As he prepared to embark on the next chapter, Malik felt a deep peace settle over him. He had found his calling, and he knew he was ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. On the morning Malik left for the National Leadership Program, he and Aisha stood together on the platform at the bus station, the air filled with a mix of excitement and bittersweet anticipation. Aisha smiled, though her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. She hugged him tightly, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Malik, remember that everything you need is already within you," she said. "You have such a gift, one that brings people together, one that helps them see the good in themselves. I couldn't be prouder of the young man you've become." Malik hugged her back, a lump forming in his throat. He had drawn so much of his strength from her unwavering support and her quiet resilience. She had taught him not only to be brave, but to care deeply for others. "Thank you, Mama," he whispered, "for always believing in me. I'm going to make you proud, I promise." Aisha held his face in her hands, looking into his eyes with a smile. "You already have, my love. Just remember that wherever you go, you carry a part of us with you." As the bus pulled into the station, Malik turned to wave goodbye, taking in the sight of his mother standing there, her face radiant with pride. He boarded, taking a seat by the window, and watched as the bus pulled away, feeling the weight of this new chapter settling over him. The journey ahead was unknown, but he felt ready, grounded by the community and the people who had supported him. As he looked out at the horizon, a quiet determination filled him. He understood now that he was part of something bigger than himself, a network of young people, each with their own stories and struggles, united by the desire to make a difference. In that moment, Malik knew that he would continue to build the heart of the matter wherever he went. It wasn't just a club or a mission, it was a way of life. And as he set out, he felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that his journey was only just beginning, with countless lives to touch and countless hearts to reach.